Welcome to the Acrylic Portrait Painting Challenge Masterclass Lesson number 3, applying the first glazes to your acrylic portrait. Applying the first glazes to your acrylic portrait. I'm so excited you're here again and joining me for this challenge. We already have the sketches done, or I should say we mostly have the sketches done if this is where you're at in the process. And I want to just say thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking this challenge, for putting in the effort. And I've seen fantastic sketches in the Facebook group and also posted in my email. You guys are doing a fantastic job. You are doing an excellent job putting in the effort. The amount of realism, the amount of skill that you've shown, the amount of dedication, portraying those sketches so fantastically, you know, with the delicate features, the shading in the right place, the detail and the lace on the clothing. I mean, it's just amazingly done. And I know you're going to end up with a beautiful portrait on your hands, a portrait you can be proud of. You can show your family members, you can show your friends, and hopefully that will jumpstart you into either doing commission portraits or painting portraits of your family members to give away as beautiful gifts, or just painting for the sheer joy of it. But I'm happy to help you to get further along in your portrait painting skills. So again, thank you for all the effort you put in. Now I do want to let you know what we're going to be covering today. We ended up in our last video lesson with the sketch and everything is finished up here. So the next steps would be to seal in the sketch. I'm going to show you how to do that to minimize smudging and smearing of your work that you've put in. Then we're also going to be whiting out the grid lines and just covering up these grid lines so that we don't see them in the final painting. We don't want to have those grid lines getting in the way of people enjoying our incredible work. So I'll show you how to do that, and then after that we'll be doing a muting or toning layer or a ground, and that's going to be basically just covering over the canvas and basically giving a little bit of a tone to it so we have something to work out of, not just a blank white surface. And then after that I'll show you how to apply the first couple of glazes. Alright, so we have a lot of things to cover today. I'm excited, but before I launch into the actual teaching part, I do want to encourage you to sign up for the Portrait Painting Challenge if you haven't already done so. You can go to realisticacrylic.com/spring-acrylic-portrait-painting-challenge. When you sign up, I'll send you the welcome kit, which includes the gridded reference photo, the supplies list, the palette layout guide, and the masterclass lessons sent to you as I record them. So I'm excited for you to take the challenge. It is completely free, so feel free to take the challenge and take it at your own pace. There's no rush. Some people have emailed me saying, hey, you know, I'm behind on my lessons here. Don't worry about it. You can take this challenge at your own pace. There's no pressure to keep up with the rest of the class, although it is fun if you can keep up with the rest of the class. But take the challenge, and like I say, it's completely free. I'll get you that welcome kit, everything you need to paint along with us as soon as you sign up. So there's a link below here in the video. You can sign up there. But again, realisticacrylic.com is my website, and if you even just click that, it'll take you to a little place in the top where you can click and then pull up this link that I have listed on the screen and below the video. All right, so let's dive in here with a word of prayer, with a word of blessing, and we'll get right into this lesson. Father, I am just so excited to teach this next step here in the Portrait Painting Challenge. I mean, just, you know, seeing the effort that students have put in, seeing the skill that they've put in. You know, you've given them a talent, Lord, and basically what we're trying to do is just bring out that talent that you've already put into them and just encourage them to use it, give them guidance and how to just take it to a higher level. And so, Lord, I pray that you would help me to be able to teach this next step here in the class confidently, with clarity, so that the students would know exactly what to do in their portraits And especially with the sealing in process, Lord, I pray that the students would follow that very specifically. There wouldn't be any smearing or anything happening to their sketches. Lord, I just pray that you would bless them in that step, and then just be able to segue into the painting process with confidence. Lord, bless them with everything they need. Material needs, for supplies, time to paint, creativity, inspiration, everything they need, Lord, to be able to do this well. And I pray they be able to produce a painting that they are just completely amazed by, and that you would be glorified in it, Lord. If anybody has any health issues, I pray you'd heal that in Jesus' name, so that they can paint without distraction. So I ask a blessing on this class today, in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, and with that, we're going to get started. So the first step is going to be to seal in your sketch. And to do that, we're going to need to take our canvas off of the easel if you have it on an easel. And you should have it on an easel. You shouldn't have it flat on a table when you're painting or sketching, just so you have the right perspective. But we're going to want to take this off of our easel or whatever surface you have where it's more in an upright position, and lay it down completely flat. Okay, so let's do that, and we'll dive right into that sealing process. And now we have the canvas set flat on a table. I have a towel underneath. That's always a good idea. Have a towel or drop cloth or something to catch drips. And what we want to do then is seal in the sketch. So we don't want to risk smearing our hard work here. So the way you want to do this is to get a spray bottle, and it can be just any average size spray bottle. A small one works best because then you don't have to use as large a quantity to seal it in. So take a spray bottle, get some matte medium. You want to make sure it is matte medium, not matte varnish, not glazing medium or gloss medium. You want matte medium. Liquitex or Nova Color is a brand I can vouch for. Other brands might work as well, but those two brands I can vouch for. And then just have a cup of water. And what you want to do is basically put in a little bit of matte medium on the bottom of your spray bottle. And we're just going to squirt in a little bit, maybe just enough to cover the bottom. And we're looking at a ratio of about 75% water to 25% medium. So I'm going to then go ahead and just add some water. You might want to do this away from the canvas. And I think that ratio should be good, because I just had it covered on the bottom. Maybe I'll add a little bit more water. Just a bit more water. Yeah, that should be good. And we're going to shake this really well. Just shake it really well to get it completely dissolved, get that matte medium dissolved in the water. And then just test the spray bottle by spraying it away from the canvas. If you have anywhere where you can spray it and you're not worried about this matte medium mixture getting onto any furnishings, maybe a piece of newspaper into a wastebasket, outside, whatever works, but just spray away. And you'll kind of get a stream. It's not going to come out like a mist because it does have matte medium mixed into it. So I have kind of a stream coming out, and then what we want to do is just spray our canvas. So it's not going to come out like a super fine mist, and it's good if you can hold it a little bit at a vertical angle like this, so that it's not aiming down so much but aiming more like this, kind of almost perpendicular to the canvas, and that actually does help that mist to come out a little better. So we're just going to spray it back and forth a few times, and that should get everything completely saturated. You'll find it might get a little harder to spray as you do it because it's probably clogging up the atomizer in here a little bit. Make sure after you do this that you rinse out your spray bottle and run your sprayer through with clean water, and that'll clean out the little jet in there so that you can use it again for something else. But at this stage here, you'll look at your canvas and it should be really saturated. And we're just going to want to let that dry. And make sure, look at your surface, make sure it's completely covered. And some areas might have more water on it, the water matte medium mixture, than others, but just let this dry and then we'll go on to the next step. You'll need to let it dry for at least an hour and make sure everything is completely dry to the touch. So I will see you in that next step. Alright, and now that we have the sketch fixed, just using that diluted matte medium method, it's time to actually seal the sketch in. So there's another way you could seal this in. I don't recommend it. Some people advocate the use of spray fixatives. I won't ever recommend one just because I've seen some bad things happen when people use spray fixative. You can have paint peeling off the surface, or the glaze is not adhering properly. So I like to keep everything 100% acrylic. That way I know what's in the painting and there's not the crazy fumes that you get from using spray chemicals like fixatives. So we have everything basically pre-sealed here because I sprayed it with that diluted matte medium. And so now when we apply an actual coat of matte medium to the surface, it should just barely disturb the pigment from the colored pencil, and maybe not at all. It might not even disturb it at all. What we want to do is take a little food container like this. These are called disposable mini cups. You can get them usually at Walmart, stores like that. And we'll just put in a little bit of matte medium, maybe to about halfway full. We're going to take a 3-inch brush, or you could use a 1-inch brush, whatever you have on hand. I happen to have a 3-inch brush here, but let me demonstrate with a smaller brush, just in case that happens to be all you have. I'm going to use this one here. And what we want to do is just seal in. You can go over just the sketch area, but you'll probably have to let the matte medium go over the whole surface just so that it's even. Just start kind of on the left hand side and work your way across. And keep some nice even vertical strokes. Alright, and then we just finish up with a couple of strokes downward, and that's one row. And we just kind of keep it flowing with the grid lines. I think I got just a drop in there. And then we just spread this out, make sure it's covering evenly. And now we'll add a little bit more. You want to have a lot of matte medium on your brush. Really dip it in and get a lot of matte medium, because that will serve as a barrier to keep your bristles from disturbing the pigment. Okay, so now that we get into the actual sketch area, the portion that's drawn upon, just really use a lot of matte medium. Just get your bristles saturated with it and just apply it over the sketched area of the girl quite profusely, with a very copious amount. And then we'll work on just basically spreading this across and making sure we don't have drips. Now that we have a good barrier here, we should be able to just spread this out very nicely. Okay, so I'm going to use this towel and just wipe off the excess matte medium onto the towel. Again, I just want to thin this out, make sure I don't have drips. So now I'm just using some basically one directional strokes at this point. Wiping off the excess. Now if you have a larger brush, like a 2-inch brush or 3-inch brush, that will work a little more effectively. But I know not everyone has access to that, so I wanted to make sure I could demonstrate this using the kind of brush that you might have on hand. Those larger brushes can get a little expensive unless you buy them in a kit. Okay, so we want to keep these strokes vertical. That way, you know, you won't have any brush strokes that are really obvious that'll catch the light if you happen to miss a spot. But this is basically it. You can see it really didn't disturb the sketch at all because we sprayed it with that diluted matte medium and did the fixative method first. And although we didn't use actual fixative, but yeah, so that's how you want to do that. So let this dry, and I would say maybe a half an hour to an hour. Make sure it's completely dry to the touch, and then you can proceed with the next step, which is going to be whiting out the grid lines. And now you'll want to put your canvas back on your easel and get it nice and secure. Your canvas should be dry to the touch, and that shouldn't take that long. It should take half an hour to an hour, or even less if you use a blow dryer or a fan. If you use a blow dryer, you have to be very, very careful not to get too close to your canvas. But you can accelerate the drying process with a fan or a blow dryer or source of heat. This dried in about 15 minutes to a half an hour. And so I verified it, and it is nice and dry to the touch. The next step right now is to white out the grid lines. So what you want to do is take your disposable mini cup or some kind of a cup you can put some titanium white paint into. So again, you want to use titanium white, and you'll want to have a few different brushes on hand, a 3/4 inch flat, 1/2 inch flat, and a size 8 round or something similar to that. So we're going to start with a larger brush, and let's dip in here. We're using pure matte medium, undiluted, although it actually would be helpful just to thin it out a little bit. Just to thin it out a little bit with a mist of water. Let's do that. And we'll just use the end of a brush to stir it that I don't care for very much. Just an old brush. We're just going to thin it out a little bit with a couple sprays of water just to make it more fluid. And that way we won't have a lot of unwanted texture on the canvas. So stir that really, really nice and thoroughly. And then we're going to start to apply it. We'll start with our, let's see, we'll start with the 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch flat. We'll start with the 3/4 inch flat, and we're just going to start applying it on the upper left corner and brushing down over all of these grid lines. Just like this. And you'll see it already start to cover the grid lines pretty well. We want to cut it up along the edge cut it up along the edge of the subject as closely as we can without going over. And if you do go over, you can just wipe it with your finger or a rag if you have one handy. I want to make sure you're wearing some clothes that you don't mind getting paint on. I think that goes without saying, but maybe I do need to say it because sometimes I'll be so excited to paint I'll forget to change into my studio clothes, and I'll be wearing maybe my dress clothes from church or some other nice clothes, and then all of a sudden I get paint on them. And you know, you never get paint on dirty clothes. It's always the ones that are nice. So just good to get into your studio clothes, make sure you don't mind getting paint on them. But yeah, so we just block this in, and we just go all the way up, and I'm going to see if I can get a little bit inside there, but I'll probably have to switch brushes as I get to that point. Let's just cover over this whole thing. Now, some people might ask, can I use gesso to cover over the grid lines? And say yes, you could, but it's going to take a lot more work because gesso is a little more translucent than titanium white, so it would take you more layers to do the same job. So I do recommend titanium white for this. Okay, we're just trying to cut around the edges of some of the detail in the hair. Just get it as close as you can with this brush. We're going to switch to another one pretty soon. Still going to use this brush for the face. Here you have to be really careful, again, not to cover over your detail work. And you don't have to put any titanium white in the areas that are darker in your sketch where you have shading, because you're not going to see it anyway. Okay, I'm just going to apply some to her neck area, and then I'm going to switch brushes. I'm going to switch to my 1/2 inch flat, give me a little more dexterity. Allow me to cut up around the edges of some of these areas. Try to make sure you get all your brushwork smoothed out. Don't over brush it either, because that can tend to create a lot of additional texture, which if it happens you can work with it, but it's better to not have to deal with it when we're painting with the glazing technique. Alright, I'm just going to apply this paint to the interior here of her shirt area. And then I think I'm going to, pretty soon I'm going to switch to that smallest brush, because that's going to give me a little more dexterity. So now we're going to switch to this round, and I can cut up around the edge a little bit better. And let's see, we have a couple areas in here that I want to fill in on her face. So I'm just trying to work my way around all of the features. A little bit on her temple as well. And you don't have to get right up to the edge on everything. Just do the best you can. This process shouldn't take too long, maybe about 10 to 15 minutes. Just look for any opportunities where you see some grid lines and some larger areas where you can apply the paint. Don't worry about covering over where you have little details, because eventually nobody's going to see that anyway. Just look for those larger opportunities where you have some large spaces of white, large spaces where you don't have detail, and that's where we want to cover over those grid lines. Try not to just paint right over the grid lines, but actually work the paint into the whole area around it. That way it's going to be a smoother look and it's not going to stand out. So I'm not just painting thin little white lines on top of the grid lines, I'm actually trying to cover over everything and give it a smooth look around the whole area. Now, it might take you 2 coats to cover it, depending on how dark your grid lines were. It'll take me 2 coats just because I made my grid lines a little bit darker for you just so I could demonstrate the sketching process more accurately for you. So I'm going to have to do another coat, maybe even 3, but hopefully 2 will be enough. So you'll just kind of have to look and see how much you can see the grid lines, especially after the paint begins to dry. But while it's drying, don't go over it again, just let it dry. Come back and you can always add that next layer to it. I'm just going over some areas that I missed. And I think at this point I'll let this dry unless I see something I've missed, and then I'll do another layer and we'll be ready to go into the next step. I'll see you there. And now we have the grid lines whited out on our canvas. So you should have a canvas that looks similar to this, with really virtually no grid lines showing except for in the darker areas. And once you verify, make sure that that canvas is completely dry, then you'll want to go ahead with the next step, which will be adding the muting or toning layer. So to do that, you want to take one of these little disposable mini cups, and we're going to add a little bit of titanium white. So I just use an old brush. Just use an old brush and just dip a little titanium white into the container here. Just get a dab or 2 in there. So we just want a little bit. Just want a little bit, just like this. So we have a little bit in the bottom. And then we'll want to use an even smaller amount of raw sienna. So wipe off the heel of your brush, the end of the brush here. And we're going to just take a little bit of raw sienna on the end of the brush. And we're just going to dab it onto this container here. Okay, we're going to mix it into the white. And it'll make a nice kind of a tan color. And then we're going to add some matte medium. Oh, maybe to about 1/4 to 1/3 of the way full. So we're basically wanting to make a mixture that's really 90% translucent 80 to 90% translucent. We can test the opacity using a piece of paper with something printed on it. So I'm just going to take this scrap paper and I'm going to take a brush just to apply this on there, see what happens. And that's probably not opaque enough. I'll need to add a little more titanium white. So let's grab a little bit more, just another dollop here. And we'll just add that to the side. Wipe off the heel. And just add another little dab of raw sienna. Just to the side here. We're just going to stir this in. Just want to stir this in. Okay, stir it really, really nice and thoroughly. You don't want to have any streaks in there. Back and forth and around, back and forth and around, just like making cake batter. And then let's go ahead and test this. See what we have. It does, yeah, it does cover over the sketch a little bit. That's probably going to be enough to tone this in. Now we're going to test it on the canvas and just have a towel nearby and a water sprayer so you can dampen the towel if you need to wipe it off. But let's test this on here and see what we have. Just start in the upper left corner. Yeah, I think overall that's pretty good, but I want to add just a little more titanium white. Just a little more titanium white. Let's just wipe that off. And we're going to add just a bit more titanium white to the mixture. And I don't think I'm going to add any more raw sienna, just more titanium white. I just want to make it opaque enough that it mutes down the sketch. So the purpose of this muting or toning layer is to mute out the sketch just enough so that it's easier to cover with the glazes and we don't see the sketch underneath those layers of paint so prominently. And then also just to give it a slight warm tone so that we're not painting right on a white canvas. And it'll make the flesh tones a little easier to work into. And yeah, it just gives you kind of something to work out of that's not as intimidating as a white canvas. Now, let's try this again. Rinse off your brush. Make sure you have all the water dabbed out of it by squeezing it onto a towel, and then let's dip this and try it again. And I think that's better. Yeah, let's go with this. So we're just going to start applying this in the upper left corner. Works well to have a lot of this mixture on your brush. And make sure you have it mixed very thoroughly. And we're just going to apply it. And it's top down and try to cover this area as smoothly as we can. You can use some diagonal strokes to help with that. But we just want to cover this as smoothly as we can. Again, diagonal strokes to smooth it out so it's not streaky, and then use some vertical strokes to even out the application. Now it's going to dry a little clearer than what you see on your canvas, so don't get too startled if it looks somewhat milky. It does dry just a little bit more clear. than what you'll see here, especially if you smooth it out. You don't want to overwork it too much, so if you start having any blotchiness, just kind of leave it be. Okay, we're going to work our way over to the right. Again, having copious amounts on your brush really makes this process work a lot easier. I just almost scoop it up out of that container. That way then we can get it up very quickly on the canvas, use some diagonal strokes to even it out, and then use some vertical strokes to smooth it out after that. And you'll find that it probably will have a little bit of unevenness, but it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be as smooth as you can. Okay, and then with this, I'm going to let this dry for another half an hour or so, and then I will meet you at the next step. I'll meet you at the next step, which will be actually adding your first few glazes to the painting. All right, I'm excited to teach you how to progress into that stage. I'll see you there.